Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I am going to be talking about the film Keeping Up with the Joneses. So, and there'll be spoilers all over this. So, just to clarify my review of this film, alright, so here's my review. This is a great movie to see when it comes on Netflix, if you have Netflix. There you go. That's my elevator pitch review of this movie, right? Okay, that's the best way I could say it. So why am I going to review this movie? So couple reasons. One, I am going to review it because I did think it was a very interesting film. It really made me think about a lot of different things, right? And so I also just kind of want to explain why I went to see this movie. So I am a huge movie fan, and I think a lot of people go to the movies when they're like, oh, I want to see this particular movie. I definitely do that. There's absolutely films that I'm like, oh, I'm really excited to see this film, right? So, and that's always a lot of fun when you can go see, a very specific film. You're excited about that one film, and you go see that one film. But, so the way I ended up going to see Keeping Up with the Joneses is it was fall. It's in October, middle of October. Not, this isn't the place where movie studios put their best films, right? And I'm a bicyclist, so I went out for a bicycling ride for 2 or 3 hours, and I just left it all out on the street. I just kind of poured myself into that ride, went everywhere and anywhere, and I got home, and there was a lot of stuff going on in the house, none of which really needed my input. And I was like, I'm just not in the, I just don't have it in me, to do anything of significant right now. It'd be really fun to just go see a movie. So I just went and saw a movie. And that's when you see a movie, that's when you see whatever they have there. Which I know also, there are some people, they've done studies on this, and they have found that this is not that uncommon. There are definitely people who are like, I want to go to the movies. And then they go to the movies and they see whatever's there. I don't do that too often, but I definitely did that this night. And so that's why I ended up seeing Keeping Up with the Joneses. And I also, the reason why is I was a fan of most of the people who starred in this film. So I'm definitely a fan of Zach Galifianakis. I've liked his work. I saw the Hangover movies. I thought he was very good in those. And then I'm a huge fan of John Hamm. I've watched every single minute of Mad Men. I also saw The Town, which was the Boston film, the film about Boston, I think, that was done by Ben Affleck. And also, I am a growing fan of Gal Gadot, right? So I liked her work in the Fast and Furious films. And and then actually, the woman who played the wife, Zach Galifianakis' wife, she was excellent in this. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. Sorry about that. But she was very good. So all the actors, the primary actors, were excellent in this film. Very, very good. There's also a guy who's from Veep in this that was really good. Very well acted, right? It was really interesting the way the film was written. And in fact, I think there were two major problems with this film. So one was the writing, and the problem with the writing was it was very 90s, right? In that, one of the things I've realized is pacing is incredibly important to modern films. They are of the opinion, and I'm not sure, I'm still kind of wrapping my brain around this reality, but I feel like movies today are written in a really distinct style. So one of the things they do for films today is they are absolutely, Hollywood overall is incredibly concerned with pacing. They're like, this story has to be told quickly. It has to move. We have to, tell a lot. We have to put a lot on screen, right? And generally, more slow films with less in them, they're hard to sell and they're hard to get people to go see them, because a lot of people were like, hey, I'm not going to go spend movie dollars to see this. I'll watch it on Netflix when it comes out. I'll watch it on one of the streaming services. I don't need to see this on the big screen, right? So anything that's written for the big screen is going to be fast moving, incredibly high paced, right? Well, in order to do that, you have to rue. Rue is resist the urge to explain. You have to put things on screen and say, this is the reality, and we're not explaining how it got here, right? So now it's really fun to watch these movies because there's so much happening and there's so much being put on the screen. But when it's not executed extremely well, it can be very daunting and it can be uncomfortable because you're lost, and that happens a lot. So these high-paced films, if they're not written really, really well, you can really get lost in them, and that's a major issue, right? So it's just it's definitely one of these things, right? So basically this movie was written like it was written in the 90s, which means that there was no rue in this film. So I'm really curious who wrote this film. Almost positive it was somebody who wrote in the 90s or in the 2000s. I'm almost positive this was an old screenwriter, right? And so you're like, what? What's going on there with this old screenwriter? And the reason why is every single tick is just all the ticks of the film are there, and you can tell like there are no parts that are left out. Like each scene sets up the next scene. There's not a single point where anything is left to the imagination. The audience is going to fill in this part. Like all the dialogue is very straightforward, and you're just like, let's tell the story, right? Which I don't have a problem with it. It's just weird to even see it in a film now. In a modern film where every single thing is explained, it's just odd to run into it. So this movie really, from a writing perspective, really, really reminded me of the 90s. And another thing that reminded me of the 90s is John Hamm's character and Gal Gadot's character. They are spies in this film, right? All right, modern spies, it's a misnomer. Doesn't even make sense anymore. I think it was a mistake to make a film. I think it's a mistake, period. End of sentence, period, to make any movie about espionage today. Because espionage does not make sense to most people. It is completely confusing. It doesn't make sense. And and the reason why is any film about espionage nowadays is just utter nonsense. It's just complete and utter nonsense. Like from 50 million, and I'll list them, right? So who are the enemies of of our country today, right? There are nations that are clearly enemies of our country, right? But because we do so much trade with countries, because of politics and a million other reasons, the countries that are our actual enemies, movies won't declare them as our enemies. A perfect example of this, absolutely perfect example of this, is the remake of Red Dawn. So the remake of Red Dawn had North Korea attacking America. This is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Like, it doesn't even make sense from any perspective. North Korea does not have any troop carriers, right? North Korea could not lay one boot on the ground of America, not one, right? And so it's silly. And so that's the issue is Hollywood has no stomach for talking about the actual problems of the world because it's going to get in the way of selling the movie to the broadest audience, right? So you have these propped up straw men for the villains, right? And this movie was absolutely the same thing. Like, these guys were spies, air quotes, spies, and supposed to be like a married couple James Bond types, and you're like, and like James Bond, even the James Bond movies are like, what is this? Like, they just don't make any sense. And the reason why is the other part of espionage is clicky clacky, right? It's all done on keyboards. The best espionage in the world is hacking databases, putting hidden cameras in places, getting the feed from them. It's incredibly unsexy, incredibly unexciting. It is workaday IT level SQL queries. It's the most boring thing in the world, right? So that was a huge problem. So the writers of this movie just did not know what they were doing, because one, you cannot touch espionage in any Hollywood film. Think about the latest Hollywood films. The latest Jason Bourne movie didn't even make sense, right? The latest James Bond movie, the Spectre movie, Safe House. Like, you can just go down the list. Like the Tom Hanks Bridges film. Like they all just, like, it's all just craziness. Like, and I feel like the espionage genre is 100% dead right now, right? Like, maybe it'll return 10, 20 years from now. I doubt it. You know, like, a good espionage film would look like the show Mr. Robot today, which I've only seen a little bit of it. It's got too much content for me to watch it. You know, so that, you know, it's an issue. It was a serious issue in this film, right? There was a surprise of an actor in this that showed up where there was a really nice, pleasant surprise in the film, which was the actor Patton Oswalt. I'm a huge fan of Patton Oswalt. I think he's super, super smart, really good actor, and he played a villain in this movie. He did a really good job with it. It was excellent. So very, very good. So the other thing that I thought was interesting was John Hamm just did a fantastic job. It is a little it's a little tough to watch him now because he's not in Mad Men, and I really feel like nobody's figured out what to do with him yet, right? You know, and so it seems like, you know, it's an actor looking for work, and he can get lots of work. Like, he can get into lots of movies. The problem is, I don't think he's figured out how to get into the right movies yet, right? So I would really like to see John Hamm. Like, I think John Hamm would be a great Superman. John, you know, the other issue is, I think you could, you know, I know this is kind of unusual, but you could do a John Hamm vehicle. You could write a movie for this is John Hamm's film, right? You know, I think he could do that. One of the other things that was really interesting was just watching Gal Gadot. I feel like she did an okay job in this film, but I also feel like you're watching her building her acting chops, right? So, which is really interesting. She's just kind of building up a kind of a skill set, right? She's not a bad actress, but I watch a lot of Jennifer Lawrence's movies, and I feel like, you know, she's an Oscar award-winning, you know, yeah, say what you want. Jennifer Lawrence is an Oscar award-winning actress for a reason. You know, like, she's incredibly talented. And so, and the only reason I even mention that is I think Gal Gadot, she fills kind of the same boxes that you would hire Jennifer Lawrence to do, right? So, and I feel like, you know, they probably show up in the casting room at the same times in a lot of different films, you know, now, but it's clear that Jennifer Lawrence is light years ahead of Gal Gadot from an acting perspective. But Gal Gadot is getting there. So really, it was kind of interesting to see Gal Gadot kind of in a build, like a football team would say, this is a building year. Like, I feel like this is a building film for Gal Gadot, just her kind of building up her acting skill set. So very interesting film. Yeah, and you know, if you have Netflix and it comes on Netflix, watch the heck out of it. Take care.